I was pretty much set up to win another Grand Prix. The official ruling was that it was a legitimate accident, but I knew what he was doing.
Every single person is given a very specific gift that God uses to serve His church. And the problem with this generation is that they bring a lot of pride, and they pride in themselves of them being able to do the ministry without God's Spirit. And that brings a lot of trouble. For example, if you look at Book of Acts, there is a situation when the widows are not distributed with their food, and in order for them to fulfill this ministry, the apostles, they look for the 7 people who are filled with wisdom and filled with the Holy Spirit. And even with as simple as serving food requires a lot of God's empowerment for them to do that ministry.
So after the accident, I was kicked out of Formula One for reckless driving. It was a bad mistake on their part. I mean, come on, I was their best driver. But I thought, hey, if Formula One didn't want me, then I would go somewhere where they would be blessed to have me.
Robert, he showed up to our ministry recruitment seminar, and he just bolted to the volunteer driver section. And you won't believe what he brought for his resume. His Formula One trophy.
You know, sometimes God just shuts the door on us, but it's up to us to kick another door down.
I mean, who does that?
Hero, that is who he is. Grand Prix trophy wins.
He started challenging me to race him to prove that he's better than I am. Every time I see him, he's always like, hey you, me, you, outside, right now.
The Holy Spirit will become your closest friend in this life, or at least he should be. He is to guide us into all truth. God gave us His Spirit so we can be led to do God's will. We never have to plan things for God. The Holy Spirit will lead every believer where their Father sees fit. Did Abraham just take up his things and go to some random plot of land and say, I will start a new nation? Did Peter just follow Jesus without an invitation? Did Moses confront Pharaoh without the direction of God? The Christian life is one of intimate obedience to our Father's will. God will lead you to where He wants you to go. One mistake people often make is they merely rely on their natural talents to participate in God's kingdom. God does use our talents. He lets nothing go to waste. He just sanctifies all these areas and uses them for His kingdom. God used Moses' 40 years of herding sheep as a tool to shepherd thousands of Israelites through the desert. You should ask God where He wants you to serve. Servanthood is the arena where we are conformed to the image of Jesus Christ.
People should value people in the ministry because Jesus laid His life down to pursue people for them to be built up like the image of Christ.
I tried leading my roommate to Christ one Sunday morning, but Robert left me because I was 1 minute late for pickup. He said, well, you should have witnessed to her 1 minute earlier.
How was that roommate that Robert left behind?
Look, I take my ministry pretty seriously, okay?
But I decided to give him another chance. So I went to church the following Sunday, and turns out he made us put trash bags
clean car is very important. You think Jesus would be pleased if I rolled up into a church parking lot with a dirty van? I mean, come on. As the saying goes, cleanliness is next to godliness.
I was so close to strangling him.
And to be honest, the worship team, they wouldn't even have an audience if it weren't for me driving people to church.
He gets people to church on time, but countless times he will just slip through the intersection. He has caused at least 2 car pileups on Foothill in the past 6 months. We had to send in our prayer team to heal the sick.
Gets a lot of respect for driving a van. Caused 2 pileups, people riled up, but he keeps his stance.
Also, when he gets next to a sports car, he gives them the signal like he wants to race them. He's pretty dangerous. And if you challenge him, he will creep up on you with the church van, like he's going to run you over.
In order to follow God, we must surrender our dreams, our hopes, our desires, and lay them at the foot of the cross. God opposes the proud and gives grace to the humble. You won't be disappointed when you give Christ your entire life. At this point, God will begin to mold you into the person He wants you to be. Your job is just sit on the potter's wheel and let Him mold you. It will be a painful process, but will produce a vessel of special honor. God had to strip Moses of everything before He could send him before Pharaoh. Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel all had to be stripped of their dignity before their own countrymen for God to use them as His prophets. Self only gets in the way of God receiving maximum glory from your life. Now get onto that potter wheel and let God mold you into the person He wants you to become. As Jesus said, if any man come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me.
The attitude you should have when doing ministry is humility. Knowing that God needs to be working in the other person as well as within myself who is doing the ministry. When we approach ministry, it requires a lot of nurturing, just like I am nurturing this plant. Every day I have to water it, every day I have to nurture it, and really see those gradual growth as the time passes. So until then, you would have to have a lot of patience and a lot of prayer to back up that growth throughout the whole processes.
I finally got my license. I was looking forward to that day that I could serve the people at our church as a pickup person. And then Robert said, "You see this trophy? You've got to get one of these first."
He won a trophy and it made him glad. If you're not first, then you must be last.
If you're not first, you're last. So suck it up.
I cried a million tears that night. I'm gonna take this, alright? See ya.
I mean, if you're not great before man, how do you expect God to use you?
When I first met Robert, it was at church. I was going into the church, and someone came in the parking lot.
So Coley and I were out preaching one Saturday night, and we were leading this paraplegic man to Christ. And so we wanted to give him a place to stay because he really needed our help a lot. So we called Robert to come pick him up.
It stopped right in front of me. The driver lowered the window, and it was Robert. And he said,
로버트가 그때 하는 말이 Hey you new girl, I want a Pepsi 막 이러는데 그때
Robert showed up and he wouldn't let the guy into the van because he said that he was too dirty. And he just left us. Can't believe it. Just couldn't believe what he did.
Now, just by hearing the sound of an engine, I end up looking back. This America is so scary. My first time here, never knew how uninviting they could be. Just want to go back to Korea already. That darn Robert traumatized me.
Needed to get a man into the van, but he was too dirty, don't understand.
Jesus was radically different from other religious leaders. No rabbi would walk up to an average person like Peter or Matthew and say, "Follow me." But Jesus saw something what they did not see. He saw what could become of them once he gave them the Holy Spirit. The first church were known as a people who turned the world upside down. Peter, you may be catching fish now, but now I'll teach you to catch people. Matthew, you may be collecting taxes now, but I will lead you to collect my sheep. This is the same call he gives to us. These people were ordinary people like you and me. God has given us all talents, and when coupled together with the Holy Spirit, we will become a spiritual leader ready for the work of God. So if you are an engineer, a college student, a homemaker, doctor, disabled, teacher, and yes, even a retired Formula One driver, Jesus says to you, "Come, give me your life, and I'll transform it into something awesome." The first step is to say, "Here I am, Lord," and humble yourself. Take up that cross and follow him.
See, now he even calls the sinners to follow him.
People don't have to have the qualification to be serving in the ministry at church. For example, you don't have to be a great speaker to lead the small group, nor do you have to be a good singer to be able to lead the worship, nor do you have to be a Formula One driver expert to be driving for the people at church, unless, of course, you were in an apocalypse, zombie apocalypse. Boom.
The following takes place between 12 p.m. and 1 p.m.
So, I answered the phone and it was Coley. He asked me to come with them and to help him out, deal with some people by the drive-in.
It was a bad combination. Wrong place, wrong time.
It was pretty intense. I mean, the blood and the vomit. This is why you need an experienced church van driver like me.
But thankfully Robert was a Formula One driver and able to get us out of the situation that we were in.
I mean, not anyone can just do it. I had to line up the van precisely so Kenneth and Coley could jump in.
So he was like dodging all these cars and dodging all these zombies in the street so we can escape.
Two black guys with zombies. That's a bad combination right there.
I mean, they were just, piling on the van. I even had to resort to my swerving technique to, for them to lose their grip.
And we got into the van and they were like knocking on the van, and then one of them smashed through the window and tried to grab my arm.
One of the remaining zombies actually managed to break through the passenger side window and latched onto Kenneth's arm right here. And at that point, he just, "Robert!" And I was, who do you think I am? Vin Diesel?
Two black men in the van with a Chinese driver.
seemed like forever. We were just scared.
But I mean, there was just so many. And I couldn't keep swerving. I mean, any proper driver knows you can't just keep swerving.
And we were calling Anna just to provide us with some support.
So, Kenneth gets this idea of calling Anna for some reason. And she tells us to go to Pastor's house. So I make my way towards Pastor's house, but she also told us to make a distraction so she can get a shot at the helicopter or whatever.
There was a report on the radio saying that the zombies that hijacked the helicopter at a nearby airport.
And so I did the craziest thing. I turned up the sound full blast, and I just kept my hand right on the horn, just like that. And if you know anything about zombies, they're just attracted to sound like crazy. So basically, we're attracting all the zombies within like a 2-mile radius to me, just so Anna can have her shot.
And then Anna just bolted out of the house and did what she had to do.
Yeah, so Anna takes the shot and she makes it. I mean, anyone could have just made that shot. I mean, hitting a helicopter with a missile. I mean, the way I set it up, you just had to point and shoot. You didn't have to aim. I mean, without my maneuvering and everything,